As many of you know, my wife is an online school teacher, and probably a bunch of you, or you've had some grandkids or your own kids who have gotten into online learning this year with the COVID, because that was like huge for everyone. And she's been doing it all along. And I think she had some over 300, 350 students. Like, it was crazy. She had like a 50-60% increase in her school or her classes. And she teaches grade 10 English and a little bit of grade 12 English, and then, some other stuff. And one of the things, though, that I have been amazed by in my wife, and that is how she meets the students where they're at. And I think I would have been a much better student if I had a teacher like Sarah, although if she was my teacher, I probably would be distracted because I would always have a crush on her. But no, if I had a teacher that was trying to meet me where I was at so that I could get to where I needed to be, rather than just being given quizzes and tests, and it was like pass fail and not much guidance at all. And there's a student that Sarah had, and this boy, he said, well, I'm just going to complete grade 10 English because I'm going to be a farmer and I don't need to do all this other stuff. And he didn't really like writing at all. That wasn't his thing. And so Sarah got to know him and started talking to him, and found out, like, so what do you like to do? And on the farm that he was at, it turned out that the chicken coop was his job. He was in charge of the chicken coop. And Sarah wisely said, well, what about writing an essay on what is the best chicken feed to give your chickens? Like, what is the healthiest chicken feed that you can give? And the kid got into this. And one of the amazing things, he did this research and stuff like that. And then he found out that this weed that was growing on their property was actually the healthiest food that they could give their chicken. And it was there, it's a weed, and it's growing free. And he had this incredible time writing this essay, and Sarah was blown away by this, and he was excited about this. And then he thought, you know what, I think I'm going to do a research paper on what is the best motorbike. Because me and my friend were trying to decide which motorbikes to drive, so I'm going to write one like this. And so it's amazing how Sarah was able to connect with this student where they were at, and like that, I just want to get through this. I'm never going to be a writer. I'm never going to be a research person. And through connecting with this boy about chickens, next he's discovered this whole love for writing and for research and stuff like that. And Sarah, if I know you're listening, I trust you're listening. I'm so proud of you and I love you. And we need more teachers like you. And even though it takes more time, that's awesome what you do. And Jesus he's also a great teacher, because he meets us where we're at. He doesn't, as so often I've had teachers who I feel that try to set hurdles and to trick you up and test you. Jesus, as the great teacher, meets us where we're at. And like the other gods that of that time that demand you aspire, that you labor, and then you self-flagellate to garner their attention, Jesus seeks us out. Isn't that just an amazing thought to consider? All the other gods of that time said, well, no, you need to earn our favor if you want our attention. And yet God of the universe, the one who spoke creation into being, is the one that seeks us out. At the opening of the Gospel of John, in John 1:4, John writes, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. The concept there, the Word, the one who spoke creation into light, the one that said, let there be light, became flesh and blood, or as Peterson puts it in the Message translation, the Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. Not only did he move in, and it's not like he just moved in and set up like a temple and said, you've got to come to the temple. No, he moved in and he sought us out, as Matthew writes in 18:12-14. Jesus' words here. What do you think if a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away? Will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones perish. Have you ever stopped to recognize that you're the sheep? You're the sheep that God left heaven to find. You're the sheep that was alone and scared, and he set out. And one of the things that I find so amazing about sheep, and I've watched this as my friend who's a hobby shepherd, sheep know their voice. And when I would go out into the field, they would run away. But when she would call, they would come running. Isn't it amazing that we have a God that calls to us and seeks us? And even after the resurrection, Jesus continues as the good shepherd that seeks his lost sheep. Like Thomas, one of the disciples that missed Jesus appearing in the upper room in John 20, 24-9. And I love this. Now, Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into the sides, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Notice something that was missing in that passage? It never says Thomas touched him. It simply says he saw him and he believed. And yet he declared that unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. But he never did. Jesus sought Thomas out in his doubts and said, "Put your finger here, see your hands, reach out your hand and touch and put it in my side. Stop doubting and believe." Jesus meets Thomas where he was, and then he took him where he needed to be. Thomas believed without touching Jesus's wounds, but by simply seeing the risen Christ. And Jesus raises the stakes a little more and saying, "Because you have seen, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Later on, Jesus seeks out Peter as he's fishing on the Lake of Galilee in John 21, 1-6. Afterward, Jesus appeared to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon, Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and the two other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Jesus performs the miracle again that he first performed when he initially called them in Luke 5. Where they were fishing all night, and at the end of the day, and they come in the morning, and Jesus says, "Throw your net on the other side," and then they catch all these fish, and Peter says, "Get away from me, Jesus, I'm an unclean man." And yet Jesus turns to Peter and says, "I'm going to make you a fisher of men." Despite all that had taken place, despite Peter denying Jesus, Jesus was signaling that the initial calling was still on. Peter would become a fisher of men. But Jesus knew Peter still needed more. And then, so if we look at John 21, verses 15 to 18, when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Now, this is one of those instances where the English just doesn't cut it. That one of the unfortunate things about English is we only have one word for love, and yet in the Greek, I believe they have 7. And so a whole lot is unpacked in that word. And so if we actually go for a more literal translation, and N.T. Wright in his translation puts it this way. Simon, son of John, he said, do you love me more than these? Yes, master, he said. You know I'm your friend. Notice here he's saying friend back to Jesus' request, do you love me? Well then, he said, feed my lambs. Simon, son of John, said Jesus again for a second time, do you love me? Yes, master, he said, you know I'm your friend. Well then, he said, look after my sheep. Simon, son of John, Jesus said a third time, are you my friend? Notice Jesus is now meeting Peter where Jesus is at. Peter was upset that on this third time, Jesus asked, are you my friend? Master, he said, you know everything. You know I'm your friend. Well then, Jesus, feed my sheep. Jesus knew because of the shame that Peter felt that he could not respond to Jesus's question, do you love me? After his failure. All Peter could muster was, you know I'm your friend. But in a moment of mercy, Jesus meets Peter where he's at and asks, are you my friend? Jesus meets Peter where he was in order to take Peter to where he wanted him to be. Years later, Peter would refuse to deny his love for Jesus and become a martyr for him. Friends, let us take heart that Jesus meets us where we are. The good news for those of us that don't have it all together is that he will meet us where we are and take us where we need to be. Amen. And in closing, I want to share a song by Lauren Daigle called Rescue, which I believe beautifully captures God's singing out to us that he will rescue us and meet us where we are.